She might be on mute. We've kind of worked together. Let me mic you up. We worked together in trying to get the message out because accidentally we both kind of stumbled into it because of our own medical issues.
Yeah.
She had a bad implant put in at a rough angle. I'm also going to put this one on because I believe in belt and suspenders. Okay. I always have trouble with audio. So we're working together on this to try to... here, let me put
if
them
we've
on
got
the same
two,
side.
do you want...
let's put them on the same side.
No, I can flip it. But would you rather have it on the lapel so it kind of gets lost on the suit?
Sounds good.
Turning
Sounds
my head?
good, yeah.
Then we ought to keep it on the way it... All right, you've already flipped this one. No, you have not flipped this one.
Tell him not.
If you have not flipped it, then I'm going to...
I laugh and say, well, I haven't usually...
Mark, I got her water. You want anything to drink?
No, I'm good.
You had your diet Dr. Pepper today?
No, I'll let you.
I didn't flip it.
I'm going to have one.
Okay, you did not, then I'm going to move them on to this.
Okay.
Wait. You did not flip it, then
I
we'll
don't know if I
keep
know
it
how to
here.
flip. We don't want them on two different sides, but here we go. I'll flip this one. This one's easy.
That's easy.
There we go.
Yeah, those aren't hard to flip. Okay.
I don't know if Johnny told you. I just, I feel like the story needs to be told, and what you said in court was, what you proved in court was just shocking, and no one covers it, and no one,
well,
like
the J&J.
They cover the verdict, but they don't cover
the story.
The story.
The J&J PR machine is powerful.
Well, when I was at the shareholders meeting, and they were bragging about all that was, all the products, and they were flashing the brands on the screen, I just started crying. I'm like, this is why no one's covering it. Because it's not just baby powder and baby shampoo. It's everything. So it's just too big of a... Well,
when I first got the test done on the baby powder that showed the presence of asbestos in it, this was about a year and a half ago when my test results first came in. And
I'm coming on
This
here.
is the story that I just told her.
oh, the Fox.
Yeah.
That I gave my buddies at Fox the scoop, so that they would have it, and they were so excited. And we're ready to go, and I've been through makeup and all. And I've appeared
that
on the
quickly?
show 8,000 times. And so I mean, I co-hosted. I mean, I'm a regular.
Right.
And we are 10, 15 minutes max from camera time.
Yeah.
When the word comes from on high, and the producer is just
couldn't
noticeably upset that J&J had said they'd pull all their ads and would have nothing to do with it.
And that's not the way news is supposed to be. I mean, it's
that's not news.
I'm going to tweak this up because of your glasses. I want to make
Well, I can also take them off. I don't always wear glasses,
Okay, good.
so that'll save you a shiny glare.
Well, I want to, as I know you're strapped for time, and I'm sorry that I don't have it.
We're good till about 10:30 or so, if that works.
Okay. Sorry I don't have a camera guy. I'm just doing it on the fly.
You do it all on the fly, and he can help.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put this right here just to capture my question. But this camera will shut off in 12 minutes.
You want to do that? Unless you want me to...
I don't care. I didn't do much other than just brush my hair after I got out of the shower. Sorry.
Very good.
I'm not good at staring in a mirror.
I know, me too. My bosses used to say, we can fix you, we can fix your hair, but we can't make someone who's not sincere and believable. So they were like, don't worry about your hair, Franny. Just keep being you, and we'll run out and spray you whenever.
I'll
we
work
need
on
to.
being sincere.
Well, you do it really well, and it came across, at the trial, and I just so appreciated what you did, because if it weren't for what you presented in court, I wouldn't have known my hips were poisoning me. And I had trouble from the beginning. I mean, boils on my face, pain. Yeah. And everyone just said, I don't know what your problem is. I don't know, hips are great. I even asked about the ions before I got the hips implanted.
Really?
I had even done the studies because I was one of the last to get them.
Okay.
So that's
when
why.
When did you get yours?
2011.
Yeah.
The end of 2011.
Yeah. The designers at that point had already quit using them.
No, I didn't know. Oh, you mean not Schmalzried?
Schmalzried and others, they had quit.
They knew in 2010.
Oh, they knew in 2008.
That was the disheartening part.
And so they quit using them, but they're still out there hawking them for other people to use because they get a cut.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a skeptic. I mean, I was a journalist, so like I must have had some of that in me. But I was not I'm recording. I was not a skeptic until it happened to me, and then I was like, no, this can't be true. And I kept trying. I'm like, surely, this is just lawyers like fishing, to make a buck.
Right.
And I was like, once I found out the bellwether trials were happening in Dallas, I was like, I'm in Austin. Like, what are the chances? I've lost my career. I can't walk very well. Can't work. I'm free. I got up to trial as much as I could, but it wasn't very much because I had 3 kids and I don't walk well, and we're trying to eke back a living again. So I was hoping you can piece together for me. I mean, I know enough to ask questions, but the first thing that was so shocking to me was that the science was so manipulated. And the FDA had even come back and to some people and brought the bad boy letter saying, you did this study and it's not right. And it hit home for me so much because this is the study my doctor quoted to me as fact when he was trying to convince me, don't worry about the metal ions, it just won't be a problem. So can you talk a little bit about that and what you know, like just from the beginning? I stumbled into the story and then I thought, okay, well maybe this is just the one time it's ever been done this way. Yeah, right. I mean, what are the chances that I didn't go looking for the story, and then when I stumbled into it, it was horrific how they lied. I mean, it was fraudulent science. And that's what scares me so much, and that's why I think this story has a bigger appeal, because it's not just, oh, well, I don't have a hip, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's how medicine's being allowed to be conducted today. So let's just start there.
All right.
If you can't, like, how do you narrow it down? Like, it's so big.
This is good. And you can cut and paste it.
Yeah, and I'll have to tweak it as I,
How's the lamps behind him, Francis? Are they okay to be, I can turn those off?
I think they're fine. They're nice. They add some dimension.
Okay. Most people think that medical devices that go into our bodies have been tested, tested carefully, tested properly, been shown to be safe. If there are safety issues or safety questions, that those have been probed properly so that the medical community is educated and knows exactly what we're dealing with. It's in medical jargon, it's called risk-benefit analysis, where you're going to get a benefit, hopefully, from this medical device going in your body. But what will be the risks? And you're supposed to be able to weigh those risks against the benefit with your doctor and make a decision. Johnson & Johnson, DePuy, turned that upside down. They turned it upside down where whoever is getting their hip implant is taking the risk, but the benefit's really all flowing to Johnson & Johnson. They had an implant that they reasonably knew would not work as well as the alternatives. But they saw a market where they could sell it, and they saw a marketing slogan that would work with doctors. To quote one of the documents from one of the doctors that worked for Johnson & Johnson, they seduced the medical community into using this. And it's really unfortunate because that risk-benefit analysis gets turned upside down. You take the risk, Johnson & Johnson gets the benefit. When the device fails, all Johnson & Johnson does is sell you another one. I mean, if my earbuds fail, Apple will replace them for free. If my car breaks down, at least under warranty, it gets fixed for free. But Johnson & Johnson has these hips that are going to fail at an extremely excessive rate, knowing that when they fail, they'll just sell another hip. They get to sell 2 for one patient over and over and over. In fact, there's a document, a secret document we uncovered, where Johnson & Johnson said in 2009 that the high rate of failure was, and revisions were, quote, fueling the company's growth, close quote, because the company saw revisions as the hot market. They could make more and more and more money off of these revisions. Now, here's what happened. In the 1960s, doctors tried to make a metal ball that would work against a metal liner as a hip replacement device. So you've got metal that rubs against metal. But those devices failed at a miserable rate. And so the companies realized if they wanted something to work better, you can't take metal and rub it against metal when there's really no lubrication. Who runs a car without oil? So they decided that if they used a metal and they put it against a plastic, a polyethylene, that you would have some wear of the polyethylene, but that's not toxic to the body. Body doesn't love it, but it's not toxic. And those would last well into 20, 25 years. By the time you reach the mid-90s, the companies are looking for a new device that they can use to open up the market to younger people. And they realized if they could convince the medical community that they had made manufacturing changes that were good enough to make the metal work against metal, that they could say these will last for a lifetime. So now start putting more of them, not just in the 50-year-old people, but put them in the 40s, put them in the 30s, put them in the 20s. Now, what the company knew is that the metal on metal was a failed technology in the past. And in 1998, the head of development for the company, a fellow named Dr. Graham Isaac in England, wrote a paper. Inside the company, this is a confidential document we uncovered during the litigation, and it was called the Endgame Memo. And the Endgame Memo, he said, why are we returning to a failed technology? We know metal on metal doesn't work. Why not instead let's continue to improve on the plastic so that we can make that metal on plastic work even better and even longer. He said in the memo, we know that it's the metal debris that's toxic to the body, and the body can handle the plastic debris.
And he was a J&J Depew guy.
He was in-house at J&J Depew. He was their internal man in charge of hip developments. And the company ignored what he had to say. The company continued their development. They had some key documents that said if they could be first to market with this metal-on-metal device, that they would gain significant market share. So they went full speed ahead. And the story of how they went to market is even more insidious. They took this Pinnacle metal-on-metal and they started selling it before they had ever tested it in one single human being. The Pinnacle metal-on-metal, the very first one to be tested, was the very first one to go into a human being who paid for it.
And wasn't given a disclosure, hey, by the way, sign this.
Had no clue when she was getting it that she was a guinea pig. Nobody did. And the company had never worked to try to figure out exactly how well it would work or how poorly it would work in any human trials at all.
And didn't have to.
Didn't have to. It was a loophole in the FDA rules. So what the FDA says as a loophole is the FDA says if this is a medical device, as long as the company will swear that it's as safe and effective as a previously approved device, the company doesn't have to test it. The company can just, in people, the company can just sell it.
Why would the FDA allow that? Like, why does, we all think the FDA is protecting us. I was shocked when I learned about 510K. I didn't know about 510K before I got my hips and I did so poorly. So what the heck? Why doesn't the FDA?
I learned in the Vioxx litigation where the head of Vioxx's, the head of Merck's medical team said that the FDA is underfunded, that it doesn't have always the sharpest scientists, that the sharpest scientists seem to go into industry, and also pointed out that the FDA at times is a revolving door. And all of that is true. It wasn't simply Merck who recognized that. The Government Accounting Office, the GAO, did an extensive investigation into the FDA. And the FDA has gone through cycles where they don't have enough money, they don't have enough manpower, they don't have enough authority. So they're really reliant upon the pharmaceutical companies and the medical device companies to self-report. And that is a huge opportunity for abuse if those companies are not responsible in what they do. And so we've got a situation where, it's akin to having a speed zone through a school zone where the speed limit gets reduced to 20 miles an hour. And instead of having police force sitting there with radar guns to enforce the school zone, instead you just tell people self-report. How many people are going to go to the court and say, 3 days ago I was speeding through a school zone and I just need to let you know that because I need to be fined for it. Self-reporting is not always the best way to get compliance.
Yeah, we talked to David Langton, one of the first whistleblowers, about the Pinnacle and the ASR, and he said it's like, the FCC, not the FCC.
FDA.
The airline.
FAA.
FAA, thank you. The FAA doesn't, I'm going to turn this back on. It shuts off every 12 minutes.
Yeah.
The FAA does not allow the airlines to self-police. So, it's like David said, it's something like if every time there's a crash, we hand the wreckage back to the company and said, what happened? Well, what would the company say? Operator error. They would never admit it because there's a financial disincentive to saying, hey, my stuff's messing up and killing people.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And for some reason, the FDA is just not in a position to be able to do that properly. And so it's really incumbent upon the medical device manufacturers and the pharmaceutical companies to be extremely honest and upfront. Now, J&J trades on this idea that they are a baby company and not big pharma. We've seen in their business plans how their baby powder and their baby shampoo are what they call their sacred cow or their golden egg, because people trust the company based upon the idea that this is a baby company. And this mentality that people have is one that's been fostered by the company. So Johnson & Johnson uses that Johnson & Johnson logo on every product they make, even down to these hips that are technically made by a company called DePuy, which is a wholly owned subsidiary. Johnson & Johnson will still put DePuy, a Johnson & Johnson company, because they want to trade even with the doctors on this idea that they are a trustworthy company. They take care of babies. And it's such a fascinating thing. And so people are beguiled into thinking that, and everybody believes that Johnson & Johnson must be this incredibly trustworthy company, and they don't realize that they are a capitalistic big pharma company that has traded to make money on the backs and through the bodies of a lot of different people. And at times they've done it responsibly, and at times they've done it what I believe to be incredibly irresponsibly. This is a company that's been fined by the government over $100 million for wrongfully bribing Saddam Hussein's henchmen, for bribing doctors in Greece to use these Pinnacle hip implants. They set up offshore bank accounts so that they could funnel money and cash payments to these doctors and others to use these products. They've paid fines for allegations of violating the kickback statutes with doctors, where they'll pay doctors. It's amazing. They've got a system where they'll go to the doctor and they'll say, okay, if you'll put in Franny's hips, Franny will pay you through herself or the insurance company all of the money you charge for the operation. But we'll pay you an extra $300 for doing the surgery if you'll use our product and let us send in one of our salespeople to watch how you do it. Well, the salespeople are supposed to be there anyway because they're handing the products to the nurses for use. So really what it is it's an extra $300 that the doctor's making on the surgery that he's charging you fully for. And it is a rigged system.
Why is that legal? I mean, I remember during the Clinton administration, the kickbacks for drugs became something that couldn't happen. I didn't understand it didn't apply to devices.
Yeah, the law was set up differently with devices. Now, ultimately, there is a debate over where that line is. So there was a time where Chris Christie went after the medical device manufacturers when he was the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, or no, U.S. Attorney out of New Jersey. And Chris Christie went after him for violating the anti-kickback statute. For that, Johnson & Johnson paid, I think, $84 million in a fine and agreed to all of these onerous conditions about having someone oversee the way they do this, et cetera, et cetera. But even there, Johnson & Johnson will never admit that they did wrong.
And the shocking thing for me, for example, with one of the bad boy letters written to a researcher saying you did this study incorrectly, or you shouldn't have thrown out these patients, or you said it was going to be consecutive addition of patients, but then you cherry picked and only the ones who had good results were included in the study. No one ever goes back and makes the journals that report, hey, this is a great device, do a retraction. Like in news, if I got something wrong, we'd have to go back the next day and say, a clarification here.
Yeah.
My doctor's still looking at that study as if it's the truth. And he may not even know that the researcher's been reprimanded by the FDA.
The study that was used most for marketing this product was called the PIN study, P-I-N. And what it really was a marketing ruse disguised as science. It's what the Mayo Clinic called a seeding study, like planting seeds. It was designed to get people to use the hip, not to show true scientific results. In fact, Mayo would not allow it to be done in their facilities because they didn't consider it a valid scientific study. But instead, what the company did is just do it everywhere that they could. Here's how they did it. They took doctors and they said, doctor, we'll pay you to put in 25 of these hips. And we'll pay you over the next 5 years to monitor how those people do and to send us the results. That sounds pretty good until you realize that the reason they're doing it is so that they can have 25 hips put in by all of these different doctors. The company does a financial analysis. They figure it's going to cost us a few $100,000, but we're going to make millions upon millions upon millions selling the hips. So it's a brilliant way to get doctors to start using these hips. And once they put in 25, the odds are they'll continue to use the hip because they know how to do it, they know the tools, they feel very comfortable. So they spread this out around the United States to key doctors that will then get paid to stand up at doctors' meetings and say, this is the marvelous thing we're doing with these hips. Now, after this gets done, they've got about 5 years from the time they started selling the hips. Most of the hips that have been put in have only been in for about a year or two. But the company gets some statistician within the company to do a write-up that says 99.9% of these hips are working. Now, the whole study is rigged. They discount those that have not worked. One poor person died on the operating table getting their hip replaced, and they don't count that. They don't count a number of different people because what they'll do is they'll say, well, we decided to quit counting as of this cutoff date. Well, we changed that and allowed some others to come in extra because they helped our statistic go up higher. But none of the bad things that happened after that date do we allow. And then we'll tell everybody that we randomly picked these out ahead of time. Not true. They didn't do that. We'll tell everyone that these were consecutive, so there's no cherry picking. Not true. These were cherry picked. We'll tell everybody all of these things. Then we'll write it up and we'll present it at the huge national conference that happens once a year where all of the hip surgeons in the United States come together. And we'll do this huge poster presentation and put it within the booklet that they all get, talking about this 99.9% success rate after 5 years. And then we'll turn around and we'll put it in all of our advertising materials that'll hold it, and we'll use it as our key advertising principle. Now, here's the funny part. So what the study actually does is it says that the liner doesn't have to be replaced. Remember, we've got 4 pieces here. We've got the stem that goes into the thigh bone, the ball that goes on top, That's all from the thigh end. Then from the hip end, you've got the cup that goes into the hip bone, and then inside that cup is the liner that will rub against the ball. Okay? Those 4 pieces, all they're really measuring is one. How often does the liner inside, no, not even the liner, how often does the cup that holds the liner stay in place?
Have to be replaced.
Yeah, well, that never happens.
They never take out the cup.
Nobody, I mean,
When they
it's so
do
rare.
revision, they almost never, because they design them such that your bone grows into them.
Yeah, it's so rare to have to take that out. So that is what actually stayed in place. 99.9% if you believe the study. That statistic's wrong. It wasn't that good. But that stayed in place a good bit. But the company doesn't say that in so many of the ads and stuff. They say that all of the parts lasted. And that's just bogus.
Who took that word, the shell, out?
The president, the man named Andrew Ekdahl, who became president of the company. He was the head of the division making these decisions. And he said, let's take the word shell out. And so it leaves all of these advertisements and write-ups that removed that word. It leaves them looking like all of the parts worked. And the doctors get these. And I mean, they're all over the place. Johnson & Johnson spent more advertising these hips than all other hip companies put together. It was a massive, massive campaign. And so the doctors get all of this material. And it's very reassuring. 99.9% of these hips work after 5 years. That's an amazing result. Put these in everybody. Put these in Franny. Put them in every person you've got. When in fact the truth is this was failing at a miserable rate. The company's internal records showed that this was failing at a miserable rate. The company did not tell the FDA the truth about it. They deceived the FDA on this point. The company did not tell the doctors about it. They deceived the doctors on this point. And the company did not let the patients know. The patients were deceived. And that's the reason the juries have repeatedly returned huge fines against this company, recognizing fraud was committed here.
And this was the first time I was in closing arguments, I think, for the 3rd Bellwether trial. And I was, when I heard this and realized this had happened after 5 years of just, I mean, my life was wrecked, and I had little kids. So I was crying, and I was like, I can't cry in court. So I just was sketching, like, and this is what, distracted me from, but it was your words. It was, it was the truth as I was understanding it. Sure. And your mom was actually sitting beside me, and she was like, later, she's like, who are you? What are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying not to cry. But it was. So
this was your sketching during the closing argument.
Yes.
And you've sketched not only some of the pieces for 2 different hips. You've got the stem, you've got the ball, you've got the liner. You could have been my guest artist, but you have put in the words that hit home. That's amazing. And I'm sorry you had to endure that.
Well, thank you. I just, I believe that, like, God can use bad things for good. And I'm like, okay, God, why would you let this happen to my kids, essentially? I mean, I'm expendable, but they only had one mom and one childhood. And that's what, was hard to forgive, that somebody did this to young people who it didn't just affect us, it affected my kids, Jody's kids, my husband. Like, this was not the life we were going to have if this hadn't been done to us. So that's the hard part to accept. And just seeing this, if this was allowed to happen with this product, what else is being allowed? And that's the terrifying part. And that's why I feel like it does give a glimpse into, doctors don't know they're being lied to. Patients don't know their surgeon could be bribed and he doesn't have to disclose it. I was seeing Dr. Matthew Eric Heinrich at the time, in 2014. I had lost my job as a news anchor. I was trying to eke out a life. And I started feeling a little better, so I thought, well, at least I can do a little something. And I went to work at Starbucks because I just love people. And I thought, well, if I could just, part-time at Starbucks. 6 weeks of training, I was back in a wheelchair. Horrible pain. It was too much standing. And I went to Eric Heinrich, and he said, your x-ray looks good. Pinnacle's a great device. Like, Pinnacle on its worst days, because I was worried because I knew the ASR had been recalled. And then I found out years later when you could look up your doctors on, because of the Affordable Care Act, the Sunshine Act, he was making $650,000 just that year alone, just from J&J alone. He wasn't on the patent, didn't make it. He's just being paid to promote it. It's like, oh, well, if I had known that, I would have taken that into consideration when he said,
everything's fine.
And that's the shocking part, and that's what I want. I'm like raising the alarm. I want my family to know when their doctor's like, we can do cornea implants, and I'm like, we don't know we're the guinea pigs right now. I found out the hard way, and I'm trying. I feel like Chicken Little because a big old piece of the sky just hit me in the head, and everybody's like, go away. But I didn't believe it until I came to court and I saw the emails for themselves. I heard Dr. Schmalzried say, well, no, we weren't looking for adverse responses. We were looking for adverse responses that we didn't expect. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
these are the technicalities, and you wrecked my life and you wrecked my kids' lives. I'm blown away, and that it's allowed.
You would think that they would have to warn you. You would think that they would have to tell you, hey, you're a guinea pig. You would think that they would need to tell you, we haven't really tested this product. I'll tell you a huge problem. The company's hope was that this strong metal against this strong metal would produce something that would last a lifetime. It was a hope. The company not only started having problems with this and realizing that they were wrong, but to save money, they started using cheaper metals. They started using softer metals that would wear more vociferously. They started using a coating that would not work as well. None of this was reported to the FDA either. None of this was reported to the doctors. And so they started making these parts in a way that was cheapened, made more profit for them, but caused even more problems. So you take someone who gets their hips put in 2011, like you did. By 2011, the design surgeons had quit using this product. They knew it wasn't working, but they were still out there telling everybody else to use it. Then you've got the Matthew Eric Heinrichs out of Austin who are getting paid huge sums and to try to sell this product to other people. Now, the interesting thing, he is a classic case of what the company would do. Dr. Heinrich comes out of medical school and finishes all of his hip training and all the rest. And instead of going to work at another clinic, he sets up his own clinic in Austin and decides he will just hang his shingle out and try to start business on his own. A bold move, and I applaud him for it. This is America. Go out there and do great things. But the company finds people like that as vulnerable because those people aren't making a lot of money. Typically, they have big loans that they have to pay back from medical school. So the company will seek those people out as vulnerable for the company's influence. And the company goes to Matthew Heinrich and they say, hey, would you like to use our products? If you're using our products exclusively, we'll let you be someone who's out there telling other people about them, and we'll put you in focus groups, and we'll put you in front of audiences, and we'll let you all of this. Now, we can't do that if you're using other people's products, but if you're using our products, then we can certainly do that. And all of a sudden, this doctor who's got a brand new practice without a lot of patients has a steady source of income coming from the orthopedic company. That's a horrendous situation for abuse, because now the patients that come in don't recognize the big financial motive that clouds the eyes and the vision of a Dr. Heinrich. And so Dr. Heinrich is someone that, on top of all of that, when this goes into litigation, starts getting paid by the company to be an expert witness, contrary to the interest of his patients, which violates the ethical rules for a doctor, but he doesn't seem to care, and he doesn't seem to be aware of it at least, and the company certainly doesn't care, because all they're interested in is protecting their image and protecting their bottom line from litigation. And you would wish that a company, when when they do this and find out how wrong it is, would at least step forward and say, okay, we made some mistakes here. We'd like to help you get your hips fixed. We'd like to reimburse you some for the trauma and the pain and how this has affected your family as well as you. That's the responsible thing to do. But instead, in a twist on lawsuit abuse, the company says, sue me. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars. We've got stables of thoroughbred lawyers. You want us? Sue us. We'll see if you can get past a jury, and if you can, see if you can get past these appellate judges. That's their position.
And live long enough to, I mean, I'm watching myself a decade of this, dealing with this, a decade of mobility problems and spending all my time at doctors. Like my career, good luck with that. My kids, there's no take a walk after dinner. They put me in a wheelchair and we go, because by the end of the day, my legs don't work anymore. And I don't know, what all that's about particularly. Nobody can tell me, but I'm imagining people at home watching this and going, oh, well, he's a lawyer. Like, of course he's trying to hunt for the biggest fish. And that's not at all the sense I got when I watched you in court, that first time, the third bellwether trial. My sense was that you were like, this is wrong. And what do you say to the people who are probably at home going, lawyers go after big drug companies because they can make the most money from them. And I know you're not making money right now, and through all these trials, you're putting out, and you're spending more than a decade chasing this. Why are you doing it?
I would be disingenuous if I didn't admit that I hope at the end of the day to make some money off of this. But I will tell you that while some lawyers probably are just chasing whatever they can to make money, we genuinely within our firm, and I within my practice, try only to pursue those cases that are worthy of merit. I have 24 hours in each of my days, and I like to spend a lot of that time doing a lot of other things beyond work. I have a wife, I have 5 children, I have a granddaughter, I have an active life, I teach at church. I've got so many things in my world beyond the legal practice. So what I have left are just a few hours a day, actually 10, let's say 12 hours a day usually, that I can spend on legal practice. There are a lot more cases than I can ever handle. I'll turn away 20 for every case I'll take. I'm very selective, and I only take cases I believe in, cases that I believe make a difference. This is one of them. I don't trash all of the drug companies. I don't trash all the medical device companies. I represent a medical device company. I represent a pharmaceutical company because they're out there doing good works with good products, and it's a joy and an honor to represent them. This is one I've pursued because this one galls me. This is preying upon people who are defenseless, who don't have the knowledge that they need to have, often people who are elderly, who are looking for some measure of mobility in the last years of their life. The last thing in the world those people need is a defective hip that's being put out there simply so the company can make more money. Because it's not an improvement, it's a step back from what's already available. But the stuff that was already available is off patent.
So they can't
charge as much.
Right.
So they got to find something new that's on patent.
Like you explained, the cell phone, you got to have the next big thing. Was all this about a frenzy about, did it all start with the Birmingham, and we got to have something to compete with the Birminghams? Another company made a hip that was metal and metal, and it was a partial hip.
Yeah, the Birmingham was definitely a step towards this. The Birmingham, though, is yet just another domino falling. Here's what really happened, in my opinion. Once the companies figured out that this Charnley hip worked, from Sir John Charnley in England, he's the father of this stuff. Once they figured out that his metal on poly hip was a good hip, he would not charge an excessive amount, and he wouldn't sell the rights to it to the companies. So he's got a company that's making it. He doesn't make a big profit off of it, and it's out there, and the only people that he'll let install it are the people who learn the right way to do it. So the American companies come in. He's British. The American companies come in and say, let's do this the American way, not the British way, where we can patent a new product and then we can sell it pell-mell across whether the physicians know how to use it or not. We'll sell it to anybody, and we'll put our sales force on it, and we'll really turn this into a market that's driven. And so the American companies do that. Well, now in some ways that's a good thing. It puts diversity on the market. The problem is it can grow into a bad thing when the companies find devices that work but continue to push the edge of the envelope and want to get it out as quickly as possible without testing it so that they can capitalize on that market share. And so when the companies start doing that, then you've got unsafe products coming into the marketplace and they just weed them out afterwards. And it's never a problem to weed them out afterwards because every one that fails, they just sell a new one for. So they'll experiment on their new plastics, or they'll experiment on their new metals, or they'll experiment on a new design. And it wasn't simply DePuy, there were other companies doing this as well. I handled the litigation against Biomet, one of the other competitors. And Biomet had some of the same issues. But I've never seen it as fully exploited as it was by Johnson & Johnson. They had figured out how to really take this to the nth degree, to the benefit of the company, at the risk of the patient.
And as I understood, the ASR came to market based on the fact that it was so much like the Pinnacle that, hey, we don't need to do human clinical trials. We'll just sell it through 510K because it was the statistical equivalent of the Pinnacle. But yet when the ASR was recalled, now they're saying they're nothing alike. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
Which is it? Why does the FDA allow that kind of thing to go on? You pull the ASR, you pull its predicate device too, right? I mean, you would think.
You would think. You've just given a wonderful closing argument. I agree with everything you just said. Here's the bizarreness. So the way the 510K loophole worked is if you had a device that had already been approved by the FDA, your new device could come out without getting approval. It would simply be cleared to sell. So the FDA doesn't have to go through that formal approval process, which requires testing. They just clear it so that they allow you to sell it because you have sworn that it's roughly equivalent in safety and efficacy, how well it works, as the predecessor device. But this creates a daisy chain. It's like the whisper game, where I whisper something to my neighbor who whispers something to her neighbor, to her neighbor, to his neighbor, to his neighbor, to her neighbor. And by the time you get around the circle, what you started out with is nothing at all remotely close. That's what happened with these. So the company daisy chains back through generation after generation after generation saying this is as safe as that, which was as safe as that, which was as safe as that. And ultimately they go back to these devices that were utter failures.
But it never affects
the future device. And so ASR is an utter failure. Now, I will be the first to say ASR is even worse than the Pinnacle metal on metal. And in fact, that's one of the defenses that the company offered. Hey, maybe our Pinnacle metal on metal is not performing as well as we hoped, but it's not as bad as the ASR. And my response to that is, okay, you can go down to the post office and see the pictures of the FBI's 10 most wanted criminals. So maybe Pinnacle's number 2 instead of number 1. You still don't want him babysitting your kids. That's not a compliment. Gee, we're horrible, we're dangerous, we're destroying families and lives, but not as bad as our other product. It was really rank. And that's a pathetic excuse.
What were some of the, and I want to watch your time too.
We're doing
what
fine.
were some of the things that came out at trial? And I saw many of the emails. What are some of the, specific things? When I see a specific email saying, "Let's market through this storm," I was like, "Are you kidding me? The thing's bad. You have multiple doctors writing you." I saw the emails for myself. Doctors saying you shouldn't continue to sell this thing. As far back as 2007, I had David Langdon telling me. We went time and time again, and they stared at us blankly. And then we realized, oh, they know, and they don't plan on doing anything about it. tell me about some of the evidence that helped the jurors to see that this was vile, humiliating the patients, that they knew that it was deliberate, all these things. There was so much evidence, and that's why I first heard the verdict come back. I think it was the second bellwether trial, and the verdict was so huge. And of course, none of the details of the trial are in the stories that tell you, oh, that's a huge verdict, and you think, must be a runaway jury.
Yeah.
And I was like, but dang, that's big. So I was like, what in the world came out in court that made these 12 or so people decide for that big a verdict? And that's why I started coming to the trials, because I had to see it for myself. So tell us about
these
that
trials. These trials, the evidence I put on takes about 3 months each trial. There's that much evidence, and to be honest, I'm only scratching the surface. There's so much more evidence than I'm able to put on, even with a 3-month trial. And so, if you want to try and get the highlights of the evidence, I take it back to 1998 with the in-game memorandum prepared by the director of HIP development within the company that says, why are we going back to a failed technology that we know is the only technology that produces material that is toxic to the body and can destroy the body? And then we can skip through that evidence and see where in the developmental meetings, the doctors that were brought in said, if we're going to do this, you better go ahead and get the lawyers online because litigation's going to be coming at the end of the day. And the doctors say it is absolutely critical we do some tests on these ions because we know that they can be toxic and destructive to the body. The company disregards all of that. Except the lawyers' comment. They do get the lawyers involved awfully early, but they disregard doing the tests on the ions. They don't test the actual product. Instead, they get the memos that say we need to get to market fast so that we gain market share. It'll make the difference in 3% of the market if we can do it quicker, et cetera, et cetera. So you have this massive marketing scheme, and then you start looking at the tests, and the tests are never designed to see whether or not the product is safe. The tests are designed to figure out how to best market the product. And so many of the tests are actually designed not by the scientists in the company. They're designed by the marketing department in the company. In fact, when you get down to it, the company doesn't have a single U.S. licensed orthopedic surgeon that even works for the company. They go outside the company and they get their buds who have a percentage interest in the sales of these products, and those are the ones they get to help market. They claim they help design, though there's some that's pretty questionable. But in the process of all of this, the company starts making them and starts selling them. Now you start getting into 2005, 2006, and 2007, and the reports start coming back that these are defective products and that they're failing. And the failure rates start climbing at an astronomical rate. By the time you get to 2007 and 2008, the medical community is starting to be aware of this, and the company has plants within the medical community that give them inside scoop on what's going to be presented at these meetings. So the company begins shifting gears and targeting their medical marketing to try and overcome these obstacles. And so when they find out that the metal on metal is destroying tissue and that it's destructive to more % of patients than should be allowed, then the company says, okay, what we've got to do is make this an issue with everyone else's metal on metal, but tell them we've come up with a new design that even conquers this. And so they make up this new concept called the A-sphere, when internally they're making jokes about it, saying that all they've done is shave off, and they use a pejorative expression of that I don't care to repeat, but they'll claim to the marketplace that they've got this brand new device that's really going to work well, when it's a ruse. It's the king has no clothes. It's an absolute ruse. In fact, their test results in an anatomically proper position show that it's not any better. It may actually be worse. So they change the test. They do it in a non-anatomical position, as if someone's leg goes out sideways. And then, I guess you get a better test result.
But these are all done on mechanical
machines,
yes, not
absolutely.
in real people.
Oh, absolutely. They don't test in real people on this stuff. They'd get real results. But you can maneuver the machines, and you can cheat the machines, and you can rig the tests. So they've got these rigged tests, and they give the rigged results to the FDA. They don't give the FDA their real results from the unrigged tests. And then they go out and they start selling these products, and they make these horrible claims that they know are bogus. The body has full fluid film lubrication, they tell the doctors, where it's got a thin layer of synovial fluid will protect and cause the friction to be gone between the ball and the liner. Well, that's bogus. They know it's bogus. They know that doesn't work in the human body. It's simply fiction, but they portray it as fact to get the doctors to use these things. And what really alarmed the jury, and what alarms me, are all of the memorandum and emails within the company where they all know they're pulling one over on the medical community and the patients. They all know that this is bogus. They all know that this is fictional. And they just continue to do it. And so you see these emails where they're making fun of the patients, they're making fun of the doctors, they're making fun of everybody, the scientists, because the marketing people have just conquered the world. And they've just got a great sales team, and they can do what they want to do. And it's all perception. It's not science.
Marketing works.
Marketing works.
And that's why I've explained to a couple of my friends, like, do you know why research and development go together? Because they can hide how much of it is research, science, real studies, and how much of it is development, aka marketing. So it could be like 80% marketing and 20% research.
Yeah. It's not even that close. Within the company, the marketing, sales and marketing people so outnumber the scientists, it's not even close. The financial money that's put into marketing far outweighs the money that's put into research, far outweighs the money that's put into anything scientific, and it is a marketing company.
And let's talk about we just had the appeals court judge, three judges who basically, and I'm just using this for audio, just in case I get so scared. Basically, it comes down, you spend these 4 months, you take all these people's time, the jurors are random people, and they sit there for months, and you bring all the witnesses and show all the evidence, and the jurors say, this is awful, J&J, what you did, and we're going to punish you with this verdict. And then it goes back to 3 judges who say, the judge shouldn't have allowed that part about how the company bribed some people years ago. It's a fact. It really happened. The deferred prosecution agreement. It really happened. Nobody denies it. But just because 3 people months later who weren't in court and didn't see the evidence are like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have used that or you shouldn't have allowed, the judge, shouldn't have allowed that to be presented. Is that what it all comes down to?
One of the cases was flipped on appeal. And the reason it was flipped on appeal,
which means there's going to be another trial.
Which means I'm going to try it again starting in January. The reason it was flipped on appeal is not because the product was truly okay. The court recognized the product was defective. It wasn't because the marketing was okay. The court allowed the fact that the marketing was out of line. It wasn't because there wasn't really fraud. The court recognized the fraud claims were fine. But the court said that there were 2 problems with the way the trial was conducted that could have affected the verdict. 1, the judge should not have allowed me to get into how bad the company's behavior was in matters of bribing doctors and foreign governments. That is so prejudicial. What the company did was so bad that a jury should not be allowed to know it. That's one. And then the second was, I had failed to tell the jury that a doctor that had testified on our side wouldn't take money for it. And so I had given a $10,000 contribution to a Christian school on his behalf. And I had not told that to the jury. And my thought was, if I had told the jury, it would have seemed like pandering. Like, hey, this doctor won't take money, so instead we give money to a Christian school. I mean, that just kind of sounds, so I didn't put it into evidence. Okay, fine. I'll learn my lesson. I'll put that into evidence next time. But here's the bizarre irony. The case is going to get retried because I'm not allowed to tell that they gave money to Saddam Hussein, but I must tell them that I gave money to a Christian school. It's just an absurdity of the way this happens. So you spend 3 months of time. You spend millions of dollars trying the case. Your clients take 3 months of their lives and go to court every day. Jurors take 3 months out of their lives and go to court every day. The judge carves his docket up, and we're going to go do it again. But that's okay, because the truth will out and ultimately justice will prevail. That's the beauty of America.
Well, what else have I missed? I mean, I know I'm jumping around all over the place.
I think this is pretty thorough. If you come up with something else, we can also add some audio by phone. You can call me, and that saves you a trip.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry for what you're going through.
Thank you.
I assume you've got a lawyer and a case on file.
Yeah, but like my husband and I are, well, first of all, like he says, he's a Texan, so he's like really animated. But he's like, Francis, if I put something in you that was poisoning you and was destroying, I got lost on my way to work one day.
Oh yeah.
Place I'd gone 14 years in a town I'd lived 14 years. I got lost. I mean, my hands would shake in the meeting. I just figured I didn't know it was a tremor, possibly from neurological damage from cobalt. But he said, Francis, if I put something in you that caused your heart to stiffen and scar like it has, I would go to jail or to prison.
Yeah, that's right.
But because it's being done by a corporation, they're protected. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to say to that. But yeah, we go, I mean, I filed as part of the MDL 2014 just going, I don't know what's just happened to me, but I just want to say it's not right. I'm not right.
Good.
And if I have to have revision,
yeah.
But I didn't get revision in the first 5 years because I was seeing a bribed surgeon who was telling me not to get revision.
All right.
I couldn't once I was convinced I wanted revisions, that once I had seen the evidence, I'm like, these things really are bad. I shook the hand of Alex Gorski. And I went to the shareholders meeting and I said, in front of all the shareholders and the board and the family and everything, I said, I'm terrified. My girlfriend Julie had one of these hips. It's killing her heart. She has a defibrillator. She needs a pacemaker. She's going to be on the heart transplant list. And her youngest child is 9. I have 3 kids. I had a career. It's gone. I had a house. It's gone. And I'm scared. And I honestly thought, I hoped in my soul, they'd be like, we're going to get you to the cobalt expert and we're just going to watch you. And they shook my hand and said, oh yeah, we'll get you some help. And I went up front afterwards and Alex like, I just had my hip replaced too. And naively I was like, with the metal? And he was like, no. I mean, and of course I was recording this all, like, just, I get so nervous, and then a couple days later I get an email from a third-party attorney representing J&J saying, see your doctor and check out FDA.gov. And I wrote back, really? This really? And at that point, I'm like, they knew, and this is bad. So at that point, I start going to say, okay, who will do my revisions? I had doctors call me and cancel. We don't take any. We're not. Now they know the product's bad, so it took me 2 years to find somebody to take it out. Like, number one, a couple of the doctors are telling me, this is made of cobalt. They didn't even know what their products were made of. Second of all, I'm like, how can I find out what's really in this stuff? Oh, it's proprietary, right? I can find out more about what's in my chicken nuggets than what's implanted in my body. And I'm saying, you don't have to give me the recipe, but at least give me the ingredient list. They don't even have to give us that. So if I'm allergic to nickel, let's just say I am, I can't even find out if it's in the device. So then my husband and I just say, okay, well, God's got to fix us. Like, this is never going to be fixed by the law. Like, even if they ever settle, based on the ASR, okay, I have 2 hips, okay, 40% goes to the attorney, all right, so we clear like $250.
On a good day.
Time value of money. I was saving every month for my kids' college. Like, do you think any of that's happened in 7 years? And the bottom line is, it doesn't give us back what I really want, which is kids to have like a normal childhood. You can't give me that back. Mm-hmm. So at that point, and then I learned, like, through the Bleeding Edge documentary, they're making their money by maiming people. I don't want their money. Like, God can fix me. God put my kid in hockey and, it was free for 2 years. Like, we pray and things happen. So, like, we're good. I'm not really money motivated, and it
Still need to make sure you get it, because otherwise they keep it, and you don't want them to keep it.
That's good. I never thought
Okay.
of that.
Yeah. No. Think of that. Okay. You don't want them
But
to
it's
keep
never gonna. It's never gonna punish them. It's never gonna hurt
No,
them.
no. But you still
I've
don't want them
forgiven
to
them.
keep it. You still don't want them to keep it
Because
they will take it
and continue to market.
And continue to market.
Good point.
I mean, it feeds the beast, and you don't want to feed the beast.
How do we ever stop this?
I don't know. I'm hopeful that the next Fifth Circuit opinion that comes out on the third case, which is due out any
It
day,
should have
week, or
been.
month. Yeah.
I listened to Ken Starr arguing, and I heard the judge, and I've been kind of YouTubing this all because I didn't know what else to do. I'm a broadcaster, and I was planting, sitting in my walker because it hurts to stand, working on some plants, and I was just listening to it all. And when one of the appellate judges was like, okay, like I know they had to have revisions, but like, I mean, what are the lasting effects? Like, and Ken Starr saying, read the statements. Like, I just broke down, and I put this out there on the internet for the world with the hope that, I mean, I know the guy's never going to see it, but it's like, what are the lasting effects? Like, sure, I may look fine now, and I may walk without a limp today, but like, give my kids a childhood back. I can't say the word hip or Johnson in my house because this has been the fog over how my children were raised. And I know people have lost marriages because of this. Families, like, by the grace of God, my husband didn't leave me, but most guys would have.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've talked to victims, like, their families have left them. Caregiver fatigue and all that. So, just for that comment from a judge who's going to be making the decision, just, whoa, blew my mind. Like, he doesn't even know. And these are the people making the decisions. So I'm lobbying for, I mean, the reason I want to do a film is end 510K, at least for surgically implant. Like, fine, do your remake of a tongue depressor.
Yeah.
But-
Q-tips. We're fine. with
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Make them puffier.
Yeah.
But you changed what the thing was made of.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of pertinent. And a national joint registry.
Those are great ideas.
But I don't know what else. I mean, because if we could see the devices that were failing, they just wouldn't sell.